Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Just coming to you from my hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona. Still here for the mastermind group, and then I got to head down to Mexico in a couple days for my good buddy Simon Black. Just a quick note. Currently, I am completely locked out of Twitter. So I don't know what is going on. People have told me that my account still looks like it's up and running. On their end, every time I try to log in, it takes me to a page where I have to file an appeal. I've filed a couple appeals, waiting back. I don't know what I'm appealing, to be honest with you. But right now, I cannot log into Twitter, and I have not been able to log into Twitter since Saturday. So if any of you are on Twitter, if you got a little time and you want to do me a huge favor, if you could just maybe mention their support, like I guess it's maybe at Twitter support, and just tell them, hey, at George Gammon, 180,000 followers or whatever, blue check mark for that, for whatever that's worth. But the guy can't even log into his account. So maybe that might get it in front of them or on their radar to where they'll actually respond to my email, and hopefully I can get back onto Twitter, because right now I'm completely locked out. So anyway, a little housekeeping there. Let's get into the first story of the day. Got a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's midterms, so we're going to go into that and maybe social media censorship. But initially, I wanted to go over and address this climate change summit. I think they call it CO37 or something like that they've had in Egypt, because the rhetoric coming out of this is completely off the charts, absolutely insane. And it's not hyperbole to say that if this rhetoric continues to take hold, it will literally kill hundreds of millions of people. And I'm not exaggerating. Let's get right into the article and you'll see what I'm referring to. So this is from CNBC, and we're going to bounce around a little bit, but this is the first one that I wanted to present to you to show how these people are void of any cost-benefit analysis. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether this is intentional, whether they intentionally avoid a cost-benefit analysis, or they're just too stupid, they're just too emotional. They live in this fantasy world where you don't have to do a cost-benefit analysis. I don't know why. I'll let you make that decision. But you can tell in this article is just a glaring example of the complete absence of any type of critical thinking whatsoever. So, sinking Pacific Island nation issues historic call for a treaty to phase out fossil fuels. And they did this at this convention, we'll get into a moment, where this UN chief came out and basically called for the end of all fossil fuels. So let that sink in for a moment. Not just gas, oil, diesel, natural gas. I mean, think about not just the destruction, but think about the death. I mean, you're talking about that would most likely completely eradicate the human race. If you just within, let's say, 3 years said, okay, we're phasing out fossil fuels. It's just regardless of how many eggs we need to break to make this omelet, we're going to do it. I mean, you're talking about no food because you don't have any fertilizer. You're talking about no way to get the goods that you buy. There's how do you build a house? That requires fossil fuels. I mean, commodities. I mean, you're talking about you're talking about us. Either there would probably be a small group of people, maybe a million or two, that would figure out how to live in caves and go back to the Stone Age and kind of forage for themselves. And these people would survive. Everyone else, you're pretty much gone. And that's not exaggerating. If you understand how vital fossil fuels are to not only the economy, but to civilization, you understand that I'm not embellishing it all here. That this is just, I'm spitting facts. bottom line. So this island nation of Tuvalu, and my guess is this picture they have probably isn't even, well, I guess this is the low-lying country of Tuvalu. Wow, I don't know if this is the whole country right here. I mean, I find that hard to believe. But my guess is they're just taking a picture to kind of emphasize their point. Okay, I get it. But they're calling for the end of fossil fuels. So here's a quote. We therefore unite with 100 Nobel Peace Prize laureates and thousands of scientists worldwide to urge world leaders to join the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty to manage a just transition away from fossil fuels. So what is just? That's the first question. Well, for them, it's ASAP. So 3 years, 5 years, it just needs to happen now. And then up here, they talked about a treaty to completely ban and phase out all fossil fuels. Okay, well, let's think about this. Let's do a cost-benefit analysis. They're saying they want to get rid of fossil fuels ASAP. So let's just assume that means 30 years. You know what? Let's just assume that means by 2030. We'll call it the Klaus timeline, right? Okay, now would that save this island? Debatable. Debatable. Because we don't know with 100% certainty that the reason this island is disappearing is because of man-made climate change. You could say 99% certainty. Okay, but that's not 100. There are no certainties in life. There are only probabilities. So, but let's just assume for a moment that if we were able to eliminate all fossil fuels by 2030, that this island would be saved. That's the benefit. Great. What's the cost? $1 billion? 2 billion people dying? So I get it, and I'm very sympathetic to the peoples, or it looks like there are no people living here at all. So maybe maybe the president of the country is the only person living on the entire island. So I would be sympathetic to the members of, what looks like Gilligan's Island. But if I had to choose between sacrificing this little teeny weeny strip of land right here, which to me looks like about the size of a normal par 5 on a golf course. So if my choices were to save an island in the middle of nowhere that's about the size of a par 5 at your local public community course, or save 2 billion people, I'm probably going to go with the 2 billion people. And I know that I'm, well, I don't even know that I'm taking it to an extreme for a thought experiment. I'm just pretty much stating it like it is. I think what's so shocking is these people either can't see that or choose to ignore it. That this blatant, just obvious reality that's right in front of them. So this is the first thing I wanted to talk about. This is the main problem here in this quote unquote debate, is just a lack of critical thinking and a lack of just doing a simple cost benefit analysis. Them just sitting there saying, we have to save this par 5 in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And the only way to do it is to eliminate fossil fuels. Therefore, the only fair thing to do is eliminate fossil fuels, because we don't want this island to be ruined. And that's the end of the thinking. That's it. That's the only debate. And if you scratch your head and say, well, maybe banning all fossil fuels isn't a good idea. Oh, well, then you want to kill everyone that lives on this par 5 in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? You evil person. What are you paid off by the oil companies? I mean, that's the level of debate you get. But now let's go on to something even more shocking. And this is pretty much the statement from this complete idiot at the UN. You know, initially when I first started doing these videos on the World Economic Forum, this was back in, it would have been 2020. I remember because I was in St. Bart's. And so that would have been summer of 2020. So I was trying to get away from the insanity and get some freedom out there with my good buddy Hugh Hendry. And I did a video on the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. And at the time, the global elite, quote unquote, weren't really on my radar. I mean, they were a little bit, but not to a significant degree. But, you know, the more I get into it, and the more, you know, it starts at the World Economic Forum, and then you've got to move over to the IMF, and then you kind of move over to the EU, and then you move over to the UN, and you see that it's all just the same group of crazies spewing all the exact same nonsense. Like they're just talking from the exact same script. You would think there would be some diversity of thought within these global elites, with these bureaucrats, but there's zero. They're completely homogenous, like they're all clones of one another. It's really bizarre when you think about how diverse human beings actually are, and to think that you could have a group of hundreds of these individuals, and they're all identical in their worldview. There's no debate whatsoever. There's no dissension, not even in the slightest. Doesn't that seem odd to you? I mean, that in and of itself. But let's get back over to one of the head crazies at the UN, this Gutierrez guy. And I remember I first did a story on Gutierrez with the World Economic Forum. I think he was speaking there on the benefits of a central bank digital currency. If my memory serves me right, that's when this clown first came onto my radar. So that would have been middle of 2020. But he says that we are on a highway to climate hell. The UN chief Gutierrez says, calling for a global phase out of coal. Again, I'm all for clean air. I think renewable energy is great. Why would I not want renewable energy? Why would anyone not want that? But again, there's a cost benefit analysis. If we can get to renewable energy without killing millions of people, absolutely. But that's going to be the free market that's going to do that. That's a bottoms up type of approach. Might have a little help from government, sure, but you can't thrust it upon the entire world, because when you do, we see the result play out right in front of our eyes. Right now in Europe, you can see the result of these policies. And what's staggering is that while we're seeing these types of policies meet reality in Europe, we still have the group of crazies meeting in Egypt, completely ignoring what's going on in Europe, where they live. This tells you how detached they are from reality. But they completely ignore that. They completely ignore the negative consequences of pursuing these policies and thrusting it, or trying to force it upon the economy, trying to force it from a top-down type of approach, instead of allowing the free market and creating incentives for the free market to solve these problems on its own. All right, see, that's the real solution here. But what they're doing is they're decentivizing any type of ingenuity. They're decentivizing any type of path for these energy companies to move into a realm where our energy is more renewable or sustainable, right? More climate friendly, let's say. Look at Gutierrez. All of these types, they're the ones that banned nuclear from Germany in the first place, right? They're the Gerhard Schroeder types. So look at what they've done. And that's just a perfect example of just completely irrational thought taking over and trying to ban nuclear and replace it with nat gas from Putin, all in the name of climate change, right? This is the direction we go here. This is the inevitable path. This is the slippery slope that you get on once you try to ban fossil fuels using this top-down approach where they just force it upon society. There's always unintended consequences. And when you're dealing with energy, which is the most important component of life, we cannot afford unintended consequences. At least not unless you want to kill quite literally millions of people, potentially billions of people. Anyway, so this Gutierrez clown, same thing. He's talking about how we're in the fight of our lives and we're losing. Well, tell that to all the poor people that can't afford to heat their homes right now in Europe. All right, tell that to the people that aren't going to have the diesel to heat their homes this winter, possibly in the Northeast of the United States. Tell that to those people, Antonio. You see, again, they're just so removed from reality that all they care about is their own little bubble. And listen, he's rich. Transitioning into wind or solar, not going to affect him. It's just going to kill the other billion people. So what does he care? That's really the mentality that you're dealing with right now. But what's shocking is it's all wrapped in this package of altruism. And it's amazing to me that people can't see through that. He says, we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. And again, you realize that they're not genuine at all because they never go over a cost benefit analysis. They never even acknowledge the fact that there could be some downside to transitioning to a world of zero fossil fuels within a decade, or he's calling for a phase out of coal by year 2040. That's really the truth serum here. That's the way to tell if someone's has an ulterior motive or if they're being genuine. Are they at least acknowledging a cost benefit analysis? If they're not, they got something else going on behind the scenes, in my opinion. So let's get down into his actually, I think that was on the other article. Let me go back there. I think they quoted him in this other article. Yeah, here we go. So, of course, he's talking about this, and this is Gutierrez in the other article that we were at first on Monday, and this is at the Egyptian CO2 conference or whatever, called for governments to take the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies and redirect the money to people struggling with rising food and energy costs in the countries suffering loss and damage from climate crisis. So again, guys, how can you take someone seriously that is literally telling you the cure for inflation or the cure for high prices, the cure for unaffordable energy is just to create more demand and less supply? That's what he's saying. Look, we've got all of these, and isn't this ironic? He's talking about all these countries that are suffering from the climate change crisis. And how are they suffering? They're suffering because they can't afford food and energy costs. This is how the climate crisis is somehow affecting them, completely ignoring the fact that high energy and food prices right now has very little to do with the climate crisis, and it has everything to do with the policies of the UN, the EU, the global elite, and the politicians in the West. They're the ones that created the problem. If it wasn't for them and all their stupid lockdowns and sanctions, we might have a climate crisis, but at least we wouldn't have a crisis in terms of rising food and energy costs. So again, this is another one of my red flags that I always talk about on this channel. Whenever you see these clowns contradicting themselves and saying stuff that is just either blatantly false or just from a common sense standpoint, you're like, what? Huh? You know that they're spewing propaganda. And there is some sort of ulterior motive. And you really know that when this person that we're supposed to hold in high regard, this guy's supposed to be smarter than everyone else. That's why he's in a position of authority, or so he'll tell you. And he's literally saying that the cure for high prices is just higher demand and less supply. So then they go on for this treaty and like that means anything. And somehow that if we can only increase temperatures by 1.5 Celsius, then that's somehow going to keep us from turning into this global, hellscape or zombie apocalypse. And if we get to 1.7 or 2, then obviously that's going to destroy civilization as we know it. But then, of course, the irony is that if we try to transition to renewables from this top-down approach, it will kill more people than like their projections of what would happen with severe climate crisis. That's the irony here. And another thing I think is very ironic is most of these global elite types are the types that are really, really, really pushing for World War III. So on one hand, they're very concerned about the environment and they want to protect the environment because if we don't, then it's going to be a humanitarian crisis. But on the other hand, they're saying, oh yeah, but we want nuclear war. If we could just get a good old-fashioned world war now with these nukes and everything, that would be fantastic. So we need to just push back against Russia. And if it means nuclear war, then so be it. That's what we have to do. But yet on the other hand, they're saying, oh, well, we care about the environment. But just question, what would nuclear war do to the environment? My guess is that would not help it. Quality of air? My guess, it would go down. Access to food? Energy prices? Human suffering? What would happen there in nuclear war? You see, so my point is regardless of what these people say about climate change, this is a Trojan horse. They don't care about the climate. They don't care about the temperature in the ocean. They don't care about eliminating human suffering. They definitely don't care about a par 5 in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is a complete ruse. And if you study not only the World Economic Forum, its origins, but the Club of Rome, Malthusianism, Machiavelli, you see that their true objective is to reduce energy use and lower population. And climate change just gives them an excuse. It gives them a narrative to justify these objectives that otherwise would be politically unpalatable. That's really the bottom line here. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. See you in the next video.